Now, it's probably going to get uncomfortable and some hard truths will be revealed, but it's time for a serious debate about immigration in Australia. What sort of a country do we want to live in? This is a debate that takes courage and conviction because the left love to label the very topic as racist. I mean, you dare have a debate and suddenly you're some sort of right-wing nutjob. Load of nonsense. It's not racist to have a conversation about the number of people being brought into this country. It's not racist to have a conversation about the types of people we are bringing into this country. It's not only about quantity, it's also about quality. Immigration is an acute vote-driving issue, and you know that because the standard of living has diminished and social cohesion is collapsing. In fact, Australians are now more worried about immigration than climate change. But God forbid, don't tell the part-time Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, who's over in Brazil, that, whatever you do. Now, that's according to a Spectre Strategy poll. Its director, Morgan James, said, quote, "The results were predictable as both the Liberals and Labor were perceived as failing to engage the issue head-on, despite concerns that recent high migrant intakes have put huge pressure on housing markets, infrastructure and social cohesion." This is a debate that has to happen. And I think this is why we need a population plebiscite, where you get to have a say on how big you want this country to be and what sort of a country you want to live in. I mean, that's what democracy is about, right? Pauline Hanson has pushed for a national vote on this for years and has been overwhelmingly shut down by the Senate every time. Here she was in 2019 on a plebiscite.
It just makes common sense to understand that more people means more demand for services. If those services are not established at a pace that keeps up with the growth, then lifestyles will go backwards. And with the stagnant lifestyles ordinary Australians have been experiencing in the past decade, we certainly don't want things to get any worse.
And the reality is it has got worse since then. Population growth is outpacing infrastructure. There's less housing. It's more expensive. Labor has presided over a migration disaster. 1.2 million migrants have come into this country since Labor was elected. Australia's population will likely reach 28 million by 2027 alone. And at the same time, Labor has failed to deliver on any of its housing targets. The supply of new homes is likely to fall 20% short of Labor's 1.2 million target by 2029. Only 180,000 homes were built this financial year. That's well short of the 240,000. So where are we going to put all these people? We can't even get everyday Aussies into houses. Now, look, if the Liberals are serious, they would come up with a policy that puts a figure on the number of people coming in, and that's a hard figure. According to The Australian this week, Susan Lee will release immigration policy principles and directions rather than a fixed net migration number before Christmas. Now, I fear the Liberal Party seems destined to do the migration hokey-pokey, half in, half out. How can you have an immigration policy without a serious fixed target? How can you sell it between now and an election? It needs a figure. Put a number on it. Have the courage to do so. Otherwise, why have a policy at all? And it's not just a targeted migration program. We deserve to protect our values. And that means we must look at the types of people we're bringing in. Now, we've already seen our social cohesion break, especially after October 7, 2023. And that's not being racist. I mean, we need to do everything we can to protect this country. Or do we risk falling the way of the United Kingdom, a country that does not know itself anymore and has been completely overrun by foreigners and not necessarily ones who share British values at heart? Now, the Liberals in the short term are saying that they won't put a number on the table, but we've seen this play out before. In the weeks leading up to this year's election, Peter Dutton did put out a migration plan, pledging to cut the annual net migrant intake by at least 100,000. But it seemed to disappear into the never-never, just like the Coalition's nuclear policy, where it was barely mentioned and barely prosecuted. Now, macro business chief economist Leith Van Onselen, who I will speak to shortly, has written about how Canada has had a sensible discussion on immigration by linking it directly to the rental crisis, infrastructure and living standards. He says it implemented a 3-year population freeze in mid-2024, and as a result, its net overseas migration has plummeted. Now, it takes courage, but right now we can't seem to have that discussion here. And no wonder voters are looking elsewhere. There's surging support for One Nation from voters who increasingly don't feel heard by major parties over population issues. That's according to a poll taken between November 4 to 17, which also showed support for One Nation has increased by 11% to 17.5% since the May election. The reality is nobody ever voted for a big Australia, yet here we are living in a big Australia. Multiculturalism and mass migration have been thrust upon us with no room for debate about the sort of country we want to become. And this is why the left don't want you to have this debate, because migration suits Labor politically. It props up the Ponzi scheme economy. And as I said earlier, why not put it to a vote? What do you want? How many people do you want coming into this country? How big should Australia get? And in the meantime, unless someone can actually convince me about the merits of a big Australia, it's time to put some serious policy in place.